The Willits City Council order for March 26th. 25th. I do have glasses. I will start using them here shortly. We all rise and all you want to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call a roll, please.
Councilmember Stransky?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Vanderbilt?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Here.
Rampart?
Here. Not on the agenda, and there's probably a more appropriate place to address this somewhere else later in the evening, but I just wanted to make comment now. I think to those that have paid any attention around town today, there was an announcement made this morning and there is a press release coming somewhere. I haven't seen it yet myself, but the city met in mediation with Brook Trails yesterday, and about 10:30 last night we concluded that mediation with an agreement that was recited at the court today. I wasn't there, but some people here were, to the judge, which caused the dismissal of the lawsuit. So the litigation that has been going on for a long, long time and was in trial. We had juries set there. They did 2 or 3 days of testimony. Was settled last night, and I wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Brook Trails Board of Directors that participated in that. Well, eventually they all did, but Rick Williams and Tim Ramming participated on behalf of Brook Trails, as well as Denise, their director, executive director, and Mike Phelan, a former manager up there. Larry Stransky and I represented Willits with Rod Wilburn and Adrian. It was done without any attorneys. They were all down trying the case in Santa Rosa, but the mediator, another person I'd like to give a lot of credit to, was Jim King, a local boy, attorney, lives here in Willits, former city attorney for the city of Willits. But he mediated it, and I think we came up with a equitable solution to the problems that not only were addressed in the lawsuit, but a framework for working cooperatively with Brook Trails in the future. And anyway, there's more particulars to come, but are out there if people got that level of interest. But I want to thank the Brook Trails Board and Larry and our staff, especially Rod Wilburn. He's been with us just a year, but he's been immersed in in controversy 101 here for a year, and what we're really focusing on is the future, and not only our future working with our neighbors at Brook Trails, but being able to allow our staff to focus on positive things for the community that are a lot more fun to work on than litigation, I can promise you. So anyway, that's my comment about that, and we will now move into public communication. Do we have any public communication items not on the agenda? Speeches will be limited to 30 minutes or less.
Hi, my name is Pete Swanton. I just wanted to comment on the grant that was just received, the Caltrans grant. It's really exciting, and just on behalf of the Main Street merchants, please do know that we are ready to put in a lot of work and do whatever it takes to be done. The Rails to Trails is another one that's really exciting. There's a lot of work if we're going to do this to be done in a short amount of time. We are on board. Count on us, lean on us, depend on us, and we'll be there. So please take that to heart, okay?
Thank you, Pete. Thank you very much.
Comment. Yeah, what he said.
Thanks, Tom.
You read over the time limit.
Lynn Kennelly, Willits Chamber of Commerce, and I just wanted to remind you all that we are having our after-hours business mixer tomorrow at the Savings Bank from 5:30 to 7. And we hope that you'll all be there and join in our mixer and the fun and festivities that we have in store for you.
Great, we'll be there.
Thanks.
Public matters update on the city's emergency water supply project. Rod or Adrian, who's gonna, anything
Rod.
to add on that?
Just a quick update, the building for the groundwater treatment plant is almost complete. Could be completed as early as Friday, may take a couple days next week. And then we'll start plumbing the building, and that's putting all the pieces together to finish up that part of the project.
Good,
And that's it.
thank you.
Any questions?
Anybody got any questions on it? Thanks. Consent calendar, we have 3 items, well, 2, the council minutes on March 11 are pulled. So we have,
We approve the consent calendar?
is there a second?
Second it.
I'd like to discuss item B briefly.
Start.
I guess this would be for, well, Adrian or Jerry. This item B about the professional agreement with Scott Warnock. And I read it, and it's pretty clear, but there's some questions, you know. I mean, is this going to be strictly for the law enforcement department or for any of the other employees?
I can answer that one.
Okay.
Jerry had submitted it specific to the police department's needs, and I scaled that back to keep it open for other city employees, because we do on occasion have higher level positions that may require a more thorough background and check. So.
And I wasn't really clear from the summary. Who does it now?
Well, at the moment, we haven't had a need. Everybody that, we actually had one done by Mark Adams, who's a reserve, but he indicated he would not be doing those anymore. And before that, Scott was doing them as our employee.
Okay, so it was an internal thing?
It was an internal thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
We've used White Star before, and prior to that, we had another contractor that we did backgrounds in the past with.
Okay. All right, that was, you know, just some fill in some blanks for me. Thank you. I'm good.
Well, if I've done my homework, here's a press release right here. If somebody wants to see it.
It's a draft.
Oh, it's draft, whoops. I guess you don't get to see it, but.
Yeah.
All right.
Full day.
Yeah, tell me. So we have items B and C on the consent calendar.
I'll move approval, or was it
No,
already
there-
done? It
it's
was
already
already
done.
done.
Never mind.
Okay, any public comment on it? Roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Strange?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Knapple?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Yes.
Cranford?
Yes. Right to appeal. Persons who are dissatisfied with the decisions of the city council may have a right to review of that decision by court. City's adopted 1094.6 of the Code of Civil Procedure, which generally limits to 90 days the time within the decision city boards and agencies may be judicially challenged. Hope we don't have to deal with that anymore for a while. Department, city manager reports. Virgil, got anything?
I do, just a couple. First of all, I want to jump back really quickly to informational reports on the warrants. The first line of warrants, which were pre-issued, I guess. I just wanted to make you aware that these conference expenses we're crossing paths with our reimbursements on these. These are conferences that REMA reimburses, and 3 of us attended the Parma conference. So I was expecting somebody to ask about them, but I wanted to make that known for the record. Somebody mentioned we did receive a Caltrans Planning Grant Award. We were notified of that last Friday. This is the Sustainable Communities Planning Grant, and this is the one where the Main Street Group and Chamber of Commerce, city staff, and North Coast Opportunities, Mendocino Council of Governments, Local Government Commission, and many other people came together and put work into this grant application that we were ultimately successful on. So we're very excited about this. It's one of the first tangible steps in our current efforts to, plan for our coast bypass era. Let's see. Reminder that the council goal-setting workshop is this Saturday. And sorry, Bruce, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I need this. So that is at 9 a.m. That will be over at the Arts Center upstairs, and it's scheduled to be 9 to 12. And then at 12:30, after we conclude that meeting, we have a public hearing on the environmental study for the REACH project. So just to make sure everybody is aware of the date and times for those 2 meetings and the location, both will be upstairs at the Arts Center.
So, Bruce? If the public wants to weigh in on that, should they come for the whole thing, starting at 9, or is there a specific time in the agenda where there's going to be public? I know we're going to be asking community goals as well as our own.
Anybody in the public can email us or drop us some written comments, and I would say, they can certainly come for as little as a workshop as they would like, but it's really most beneficial to come for the whole thing.
Okay. Any other
Nope.
city manager reports? Thank you.
You haven't been doing much this week.
Department recommendations, anything for city clerk?
Not at the moment.
Susie?
Not tonight.
Do that. Legal, anything going on there?
No, we're good.
You demand. Chief?
Wow.
Anything more in public works and engineering, Rod?
We don't have anything tonight.
Okay.
Sorry.
Don't interrupt my
I
flow.
know we are all exhausted, but I do have a question for Public Works.
I'm sure everybody wants to hear.
Flushing program, are we, given the recent rain, are we thinking about taking that on?
$10.
I'm gonna take
Where's Colleen?
it. Excuse me.
Or would you like to get me more information later? I can see you Rochambeauing back there.
We don't have a good answer for that right now. It's a 2-month process, so
Yeah.
we'll be able to give you a better answer if we get 5 inches of rain next week.
Okay, thank you.
Move on to committee reports. MCOG,
Nothing on INCOG, please.
LAFCO.
LAFCO had a special meeting with our new council, and I have some more detailed information about how the city of Willits could address the bypass interchanges and what's the best method for us to make sure that we weigh in. But I'd like to maybe come up with a presentation or something for you all, or a memo, because the council had some interesting things to say about our sphere of influence and how if we're wanting it to stay in open space, in theory you wouldn't include it, but there's a lot of detail work. So I'll bring it back when I have more information.
I think that would be great. I'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay, MTA.
They will be meeting tomorrow, and I will be out of town, so I won't be there for that one.
MSWA.
This one met last week, but I was out of town, so I missed it.
Mike, did we miss anything?
You passed the budget.
Oh, okay.
You'll come to
Damn.
Thank you. This is Mike Sweeney, the executive director of MSWA. Not here for the next item. EDFC.
EDFC met 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't able to attend, but John Curry spoke here in Willits on Sunday, and was a very interesting presentation with a lot of enthusiasm for new opportunities to invest locally and for local, meaning regional, sort of Mendocino and Lake County enterprises to avail themselves of new funding sources that are kind of cutting edge. And hopefully there'll be an article following up on that, and people interested can find out more about it.
Thank you. League, you went to a league deal.
The league met in Cloverdale, our region. There's a lot of discussion about funding water projects, so it was really good for both Adrian and I were able to attend that. So that was important. Everyone is trying to figure out how to deal with paving and infrastructure projects, given that the gas taxes. They are working on fixing all those issues. I'll leave it at that.
They'll never run out of work.
They will not.
Water and wastewater?
No.
Not the standing committee didn't, but obviously that. Revite Ed?
Did not meet.
Finance? Ad hoc committees, bypass has not met. Solid waste deal, we're gonna get to that in a second. Solar array project?
Solar array, we're trying to set up a meeting of the ad hoc committee for next week. We're ready to get some kind of a presentation.
The Main Street improvement?
Main Street improvement did not meet, but I have been informally informed that the people would really like to get going on it and would like to get in and help all the city all that they can. So we need to call on them. Thank you.
We'll schedule a meeting. Center for the Arts?
Nothing on that right now.
We should have a little more time for some of this other stuff.
Yeah.
It will be nice. Any other committee reports I'm missing from anybody? So we'll go on to the one real item I guess we have here this evening is our discussion of the solid waste franchise agreement with Solid Waste of Willits. Adrian, what's going to be who's going to be the presenter of this? Is that you going to do, Ron? I mean,
Yeah,
I've read
I'll
the deal.
do that, yeah.
Are we expecting Mr. Ward?
I don't know. Basically, we've met and we've kind of reported on this, and at the last council meeting, we had a brief discussion, but the background information hadn't been prepared, so we really weren't ready to get into a lot of detail. But what the purpose tonight is the committee has come down to a few items that we feel needs the input of the full council before we go to solid waste to present them with our, what we'd like to hope is the final offer. Excuse me. So I guess the way to do this is we have...
Well, you have these listed in bullet points.
Right, so maybe we can just go down through them.
I would suggest we just go down through them and
Yeah.
discuss them, take public comment if they have any on those items as they come through, and council has any other suggestions or recommendations that are not included in this document. Obviously, would be a time to bring those up, and we do have Mike Sweeney here, who is well-versed in these topics from a variety of other jurisdictions, and he represents them in their contractual negotiations. So I believe he is here for counsel if it's asked, right? Thanks.
Okay, so we prepared what we call the Addendum A, which is a list of these bullet points. and they were arranged in order, in some kind of order of the easiest to a little more discussion worthy. So the first one is the term of the agreement, and this is pretty straightforward. By the way, we use the existing agreement that expires in October of this year, October 31st. We use that as a sort of a starting point, and we use the template that was prepared by Jerry Ward from Solid Waste, and we combined all those things together. We went through and we tweaked and pushed and pulled a little bit. So the first one is the term of the agreement, and this would be a 15-year agreement that would begin on November 1st of 2015 and extend to 2030, October 31st. Larry?
I think that's okay, but I don't like the automatic extension to add another 10 years. I think that ought to be stricken from the terms of the agreement.
Well, it does say in there, unless a written notice of non-renewal is given by the city to the contractor. Does that cover it for you, Larry?
Nope.
This was in the existing, this is in the existing.
You asked
No,
for input, and I'm telling you my input. It shouldn't be in there. Thank you. That's the end of agreement.
Okay. Okay, so then what we propose that the agreement would include would be an automatic 10-year extension, as you just heard. And it's in the existing agreement. There's language that says that we have to notify solid waste, I believe, within 2 years of the end of the termination of the agreement, to tell them that we do not intend to extend the agreement. And that opens it up for negotiations for a new agreement. And that's exactly what happened here. I think we sent the notification to solid waste probably back in August, July, something on that order. And that meant that if we did not reach a new agreement that would go into effect in November of this year, then we would not have an agreement. It would just, that would be the end of the whole thing.
No, it would automatically renew for another 10 years.
No, we told them.
Well,
The existing one I'm talking about.
The existing one.
That's why we notified. But anyway, that's not going to happen because that's sort of opened up for a new thing. So that's a term of agreement. Any public comments or questions?
I'll run the meeting, Ron. But do we have any comments, any other comments from members of the board up here? Yes.
Yeah, I don't object to having a 10-year renewal, assuming that in year 13 or 14, we don't have any issues and everything's going very smoothly. So that provision doesn't really bother me, but I also don't feel really attached to it, because at the end of the 14th year, if we don't have that provision, we simply negotiate a new contract. So, you know, it's not a big deal one way or the other. So if Larry would rather not have that in there, I don't feel wedded to having the 10-year so-called automatic. And I know Mike may have a comment if that's sort of standard, but, you know, I don't think it makes a big deal one way or the other.
To me, it means that the city has to take a proactive approach of it. You have to have some particular in there that reminds you to do it. I haven't got a, you know, we did it this time after 15 years. It wasn't a problem. And so, you know, I wouldn't want to fall on my sword on that thing. If that was important to Jerry to have it in there, it doesn't seem like it's beyond the ability of who's ever in this staff position at 2030 or 29 or 28, when that comes up, they should be able to be sharp enough to bring that up. So I'd leave it in myself.
Well, you know, the fact is that whether or not we have it in, the city will still have to take some sort of action in 13 or 15 years, either to prevent the contract from running out with no coverage, or to set it up to do a new contract. So at any rate, the city will still have to take some sort of action in 20, 28, 29, something like that. So either way, would work.
But maybe we can keep going and we'll, just like Larry did, voice if we have issues with
Okay,
it.
so another is the exclusive rights.
And basically what that says is that solid waste has the exclusive right
Yeah,
to make all of the pickups in the city. And that's what the franchise is about. And the committee supported that.
yeah. I don't hear any comments up here. Somebody have comments from the public, raise your hand, and we'll be happy to take them on. Don't need a formal, open every public hearing on each item. Something here tickles your fancy and you want to hear more about it.
Okay, the next item is the franchise fee. And currently, the current agreement, solid waste pays a franchise fee of 12% to the city. And this proposed agreement would raise the franchise fee to 15%, payable on a quarterly basis. Now, right now, by the way, the 12% is paid in one annual payment. So with the proposal to raise it to 15% is also the proposal, and this actually came from solid waste, to do it quarterly. Now, just for your information, the franchise fee is calculated from the annual net revenues, which consist of the gross revenues less the revenues that come from state and federal government agencies. So, for example, solid waste does trash pickup for the school district and for the college and for the tribes, and that's not included in their gross revenues. And just for the record, from the period from 2007 through 2013, the city received a total of $875,827, or about $125,000 per year in franchise fees. Now, if we increase the franchise fees from 12 to 15%, using the gross revenues from 2013, this would result in an additional $39,350 that would be paid to the city. And the committee feels this would be appropriate in view of the wear and tear on city streets, which result in increased maintenance costs. Now, the franchise fee is part of the expenses that are paid, franchise fee is part of the expenses that are accrued to solid waste. And their expenses are one of the elements that drive the rates to the ratepayers. So in other words, you pay so much a month to have your trash picked up, and that rate is calculated on a number of factors, and we'll get into that in another bullet point. But if the franchise fee increases, there will likely be a pass-through to the ratepayers.
Is that something that we control? I mean, can we, I see the recommendation is to go with the 15%, which I support.
With no pass-through.
With no pass-through to ratepayers, but is that in previous agreements, have we been able to say that? We would like you to provide this service and not pass it on?
I mean, we can put that to him, and of course, being a negotiation, he can say yes or no.
Right.
We have already mentioned this in our meetings with them, and he has said no, he would have to pass it on.
Okay.
I never remember doing a 218 on franchise fees. I assume they're exempt from the 218?
There's a different thought on this. I think the general thought is that if these fees are solely being imposed by a private company, the rate hauler, as opposed to the city imposing the fees, or the city collecting the fees or putting them on tax rolls, then 218 doesn't apply. But if the city is involved in setting the rates, and they're an increased rate that's imposed by the city, or the city assists the private company in collecting the bills from customers, then it would be a 218 process.
So your answer is?
My answer is that if the city's not going to be involved in collecting the bills, and this is our rates imposed by the franchisee, then it's 218 exempt.
I saw one question in the
My
audience.
question was answered, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
I would just like ask Mike to point out where Willits's 12% current franchise fee relative to other jurisdictions, and are we kind of, by raising it to 15%, are we still kind of in the majority of most jurisdictions?
The city of Ukiah has an effective 18% franchise fee. Fort Bragg has 21%. County of Mendocino has 12% presently.
So we're not.
Are they all based on the same gross number?
Ukiah, the gross revenue in Ukiah includes the school district, I know that.
But it's,
There are some exclusions under the county of independent government agencies. I was puzzled by the school district because I don't recall that being excluded in the county calculations. So that's a negotiable item. See, Jerry's position here is that for independent government agencies which don't have to use him as a hauler, he has to negotiate and possibly might have to offer a lower rate in order to get their business. Therefore, he feels he should be relieved of the franchise fee as part of his costs, so he can bid lower. So there's an argument there that he is represented insofar as your negotiations go.
but you're telling us that it's an apples and apples comparison when you...
On the franchise fees?
Yes.
Pretty much.
For Ukiah, Fort Bragg, and...
Yes.
And let's see the others. Thank you. It feels to me like a sneaky way to raise taxes. So that's what it feels like to me. And that's, so I mean, I'm not inclined to support it for that reason, but does anybody else want to weigh in on this?
I support it. It's true that we haven't had to do a 218, we haven't had to do a 218 for his rates. But the premise behind that being the cost of providing the service, you charge for the cost of providing the service. And the increase to 15% seems more in line with people around us. So I support Ad Hoc's recommendation on that one.
And you support that? Yeah.
Yes, and provision provided that we are not raising the rates to the ratepayers, and I believe, based on a review of the solid waste financial reports, that there is enough profit margin for him to be able to handle the 15% without an increase in rates. To me, that is a necessity. I do not want to see our rates go up by virtue of doing this, but I think there's enough room in there for that.
Larry, do you want to weigh in on this?
No, it doesn't make any difference. I think it ought to stay the same, but that's just...
So I think it looks, we had one other comment from the...
I just wanted to make sure I'm hearing correctly that we would increase you guys would increase the franchise, in the agreement, we'd increase the franchise fees to 15%, but within that agreement is a clause that they cannot pass those rates, that rate increase on to the customer.
Well,
in the perfect world, that's
And
what
so that's
is
the
being
nature of my question is like, is that clause in there? And if so, how
Where-
long does that protection
Where
stay?
this is a new contract, so it is a clause, we are talking about the contract here. So this is a clause in the contract. Tracking that as you do CPIs, okay, as we do CPIs and that grows in the future. Can I get you to just give your name? Everybody doesn't have to jump up, but when we get comments from the community,
My name is Fred Bieberbach.
okay, thanks, Fred. So it looks like the majority supports it. It's a,
Well, not necessarily.
oh, you haven't said what you're doing.
No, I didn't say, and I tend to lean towards the 12%. I mean, an extra 39,000 is nice for the city to get, but to answer your point, it's not in the agreement yet that there's no pass-through. That would be part of the negotiation.
Okay, that's what I
It
was-
could be accepted or not accepted by solid waste. From past conversations, he is inclined to pass it through. So how that plays out all depends on, you know, who beats up who more. But my gut would tell me that it would be a pass-through. And personally, I'm not particularly interested in enriching the city by $39,000 and letting the ratepayers pay for it.
Just another comment, and that is that what is written into whatever agreement we actually sign, it will have what are the rates effective January 1st, 2016. And from then on, it will be a cost of living. There's provisions for how that's raised. So if he and we sign an agreement that says 15% franchise fee with the rates set as they are right now, effective January of 2016, that's a contractual agreement, so that would be the rate. It
I
would
wasn't
not.
sure if that was a proposal or if that was written into.
It's what the,
So that was clarified.
yeah, the recommended proposal, which there's obviously not complete unanimity about, is that, and I support this proposal, that I think that we can ask for a 15% franchise fee without having the ratepayers raised rates. And if, you know, Jerry, obviously.
I'm not particularly opposed to seeing it go to 15%, but I feel that the, almost, you know, I mean, we're so conditioned to this 215 process of, which is actually a fairly sneaky way to raise rates in its own, you know, but at least it does allow for public participation, you know.
Right.
That you are actually, if the protest vote of the, you know, it allows a weigh-in. So I think you're getting a split message on that.
Yeah.
You just take it
Well, I
to
got a
negotiation.
3-2 vote, I got a 2.5,
Right.
because Larry,
And we haven't gone to the rest of it, but I am more interested in mixed food and organics
Okay, well,
waste, so I'd be
okay, well,
willing
that's-
to,
We're
let me finish. I would be willing to stick with 12 if we could go for the full organic waste every week, no pass-through. But we'll get there.
okay.
I'm willing to negotiate.
It's really hard to do it this way, but I understand, I do recognize ad hoc's frustration in trying to move forward with negotiating this contract with so many variables and not quite having the feedback from the council. So this is some of the awkward, not so attractive part of government work here, is trying to,
Get consensus.
well, we never really look for consensus, we look for majority.
Yeah, this is democracy.
It's a goal.
So,
Okay.
so the next part is the MSWA surcharge.
The MSWA surcharge, it's a $5 a ton that's paid by solid waste to MSWA as a funding stream, and we didn't see any reason to do anything with that one way or the other. Now, and of course, that is also part of the, that becomes part of their expenses, which is also part of the rate.
It is also a pass-through.
Right.
It's currently paid, but why would we need to have it in our agreement?
Again, we were using this, a model contract that Jerry had prepared, and it just,
Okay.
maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it in there, but, you know, it would be in there.
Okay.
Okay?
You know, I support that unless Jerry wants to counter with an enhanced
Right.
proposal. I mean, we need those, we need the services that MSWA provides by law, so, and, you know, short of somebody else coming up with a competing, more attractive proposal.
Yeah, and there hasn't been any comment on that. A lot of these these bullet points are in here just for the council's interest and for the public, but a lot of them had no controversy attached to them. All right, the next one is the annual rate adjustments. And this, I want to explain this one because this is one that had to be kind of cleaned up to make it good. The current, I'm going to read what was written here because it makes some sense because it was written, you know, with a clear mind and a pure heart. The current agreement provides for an annual rate adjustment to offset the cost of living, COLA, increases in the cost of providing services. The COLA is 90% of the data contained in the San Francisco Bay Area Index that is published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the United States Department of Labor. So what happens is that only 90% of the cost of living index is applied to the annual rate adjustments, not 100%. That's written in the contract, and that's what's in the existing contract as well. So there's 4 components to the annual rate adjustment. One component is the recycling commodity value adjustment, which basically is a composite of the market value of the recycled materials that are collected by solid waste. They sell these materials, and it's a revenue stream for them. So that kind of, you know, helps to balance out their cost of living increases. And I have some other information here, but that's just the technical part. There's a diesel fuel pass-through. The cost of diesel fuel, obviously, to operate their trucks, that's also a component of the annual rate adjustment. And, the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, as I stated above, this comes from the Bay Area Index, and we focused on using the rates, of using the figures from August to August of the previous year, and we felt that was important to narrow down on a particular month of the year, because if you go online and you can find these a little spreadsheet that gives you the CPI for anywhere you want to look for any period of time. So just for the heck of it, I checked it for 12 months, from January, February, etc., and they were all different. So we felt that it's important to lock in a date. And we picked August because other rates that solid waste uses, like the diesel fuel and the recycling commodities, they all come out around the same time in August. So he can get all of these numbers together at one time, and they're all, you know, like on the same page. Okay, so that's the Consumer Price Index. And then the last element is a pass-through from the landfill tipping fee, and that's a fee that is charged to solid waste whenever they load up their trucks and drive down to the landfill, which the one that's used now is in Potrero Hills, and they are charged so much a ton for tipping fees, and that's just a straight pass-through. So again, the committee felt that this was a good way to use all these components.
Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the things that has been the case with the 15-year contract that we have now that's about to expire is that the 90% CPI was applied to everything rather than breaking it into 4 components. And that meant that some things, like the tipping fee, was kept up with the tipping fees and added 90%. So the actual inflation of the rates over the last 15 years ended up being almost double the rate of inflation due to various, adjustments that were made over that whole 15-year period.
Because you had a fixed tipping fee and you were...
That was part of it, yeah. And there were several requests for additional compensation. And then the other thing that's very important about this, I think, is the diesel fuel pass-through being separate, because right now diesel fuel prices are way down. So it could be in some years that the current rates actually get lowered when all of these adjustments are applied instead of raised. But it depends obviously on both the consumer price index and the fuel adjustment, and it's the combination of those. But that way you're not double charged for anything.
And the ad hoc is in agreement on this one?
Ad hoc
Yeah.
supports this
Yeah,
method.
yeah.
Yes.
Mike, did you have a little
Yes, I have a
offer?
couple of comments. This system is used basically in all the other contracts in the county now. It's the best we could come up with to do this fairly, so it's fair both to the public and to the hauler in terms of recognizing changes in basic costs on a year-to-year basis. There is something you should note. You didn't have this in your contract for the last 15 years, and as Madge noted, the rates, for a variety of reasons, went up at twice the rate of inflation. And as you explained, part of the reason was because the way the existing contract was being applied, there was double counting of what the landfill inflated, and that was passed through. And then the entire cost of SWA's operation was inflated by the CPI, so the landfill portion was double counted. And that had a cumulative effect over the years. One of the important things to note now is the diesel fuel index, because diesel fuel has gone down sharply since September of last year. And SWA is essentially realizing a windfall from this. I looked at their financials and looked at the decline in diesel fuel and the outlook for that. That will continue for the rest of this year because the Saudis keep pumping and the U.S. keeps pumping and so on. And it appears by my calculations that SWA is realizing a windfall of at least $50,000 in this calendar year from the diesel fuel decline. Now, if we were successful in getting a new agreement with SWA effective November 1st, that essentially is going to lock that windfall into place, because you say, well, what happens when the price of diesel goes up again in the future, in 2016 or 2017? Well, we will have put into place a mechanism to compensate SWA for that future diesel fuel increases. So the windfall they're experiencing now will be locked in. And that's a basic savings, that's money on the table, in my view, that the Willits public can negotiate for in this process.
Thank you, Mike.
By the way, I neglected to thank Mike. He's been with us at all the meetings. We've had some intense conversations during the meetings, but that was good. He's a font of knowledge, and I appreciate your input.
Mike, is there any way to incentivize the negotiation of rates on tipping fees?
You mean what SWA pays at the landfill?
Well, I mean, I assume that, it seemed to me that he had a locked-in long-term tipping fee.
He does.
And maybe that has expired, or is it about to expire?
No, he's got that locked in till 2030.
Oh, so it is.
Well, it is inflated annually by the CPI.
It is adjusted by CPI, but
It
the
is.
rate's locked. So, but what I was saying, wondering is if that, when that expires, and if it's a simple pass-through, so if the landfill decides they want to go to $50 a ton instead of 25, no skin off his nose to
Pass it through.
negotiate that, because it is a straight pass-through.
Yeah, in a contract like this, presuming we get all the correct clauses into it, the city would be involved if something like that happened, because you retain the power to choose what landfill he goes to. So if he can't come in and say, oh, if Betrayal Hills wants to double me, I have to pass it through under your rates, at that point the city could look and say, well, how about Redwood landfill? Do we better get a better deal there? And so there would be a process.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing in regard to the comment that Mike made about the windfall on the diesel fuel, I think it would be a good idea for us the next time we sit down with solid waste is to mention that and maybe factor that in some sort of a rate reduction, so we can start out from where we are right now.
I'm all for doing that. I suspect he's going to tell you that, I see him, I suspect he's going to tell you that he went some years without a rate adjustment where he was eating it. So in the back, yeah, hi.
Ananda.
Ananda.
Johnson. Just for
clarification, because I'm just wondering, when we talk about the diesel pass-through, are we taking then into consideration that we have control where the hauls are going, so that if it's going, let's say, to Potrero, but could be closer, then we can say, bring it closer so that those hauling fees drop, as well as when it's, let's say, going to Potrero and could stop, let's say, at a place like Cold Creek Compost, which is all the way back to Willits to pick up, let's say, a backhaul, those fees then that he's able to realize from that, the savings on a backhaul would also be helpful. So is that all taken into account?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's complicated, as you can imagine, because, well, I guess we would really be depending.
The city does, the city does have the right to dictate which landfill, Mike just told us, the landfill is used for that project, so for the hauling of the municipal waste. And so in that regard, if there was a competitive advantage to haul the garbage to a Sonoma County landfill, then it would seem to me it would be in a mutual interest to do that anyway.
And what we're trying to do here is have a whole package that assures that ratepayers aren't going to have a raise of rates, possibly a reduction in rate, but certain benefits and extra services that haven't been provided. So that is the whole point of the negotiation, is to say, you, solid waste, can provide these services at this competitive rate for our ratepayers, or not. If he says, no, I can't do that because I have to drive this far and it's going to cost more, and then we might end up wanting to get a competitive bid. But if he can live with these provisions that we're saying that the city wants, if he will live with those, then we have a negotiated agreement.
Linda, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered, did you guys look at any projection about how much decline in the waste stream we were supposed to have as a result of recycling and other stuff, and looking at the rates?
We're getting to the recycling.
Well, I was mostly wondering how that might affect the overall rate, because you'll make fewer trips to the dump. You'll be,
We have data from other other jurisdictions that have been doing this kind of program, and those who really have an aggressive, good public education. Portland is a fabulous example, and we would want to have that kind of accountability.
I was just wondering whether you could still function under the current method of calculating this stuff if you only went to the Potrero Hills once every,
Yeah, there would be a savings. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there would be less stuff going to the landfill.
The ratepayer controls their cost by the size of container they put out. Once you get down to the minimum size container, I guess you're kind of, that's about the lowest cost you can have.
Most people are at the minimum.
No, the majority, about three or four times the, how do I put it, you have the 20-gallon and the 35-gallon. The 35-gallon users are about 4 times the number of 20-gallon users.
Okay.
Just roughly.
Great, thanks.
So, and what would happen, of course, is that some of the 35-gallon users would, drop down, so there would be that. Okay?
Okay, let's.
All right, the next one.
We done up here on that one? Okay.
All right, the next one is assignment of transferring the franchise, and we wanted to make sure that there was language if Jerry Ward ever sells solid waste, that the city has the opportunity to approve or disapprove that transfer. So written in the proposed agreement is the fact that is terms that solid waste would notify the city in writing 60 days in advance of the transfer, and the party to which the ownership is being transferred would have to demonstrate that they have the financial means, experience, and capabilities to fulfill the requirements of this agreement, and he demonstrates that the best interest of the public will be served and service levels will not decline or rates increase as a result of the transfer of ownership. And in addition to that, the city retains the right to go out for competitive bids at any time during the contract. So the city will retain, pretty good control over who, if anybody, buys the franchise.
It doesn't really control who buys it, you only control whether you continue your contract.
Yeah.
And that's, and I think clearly Mr. Ward would like to sell his business to somebody and they are willing to buy it knowing that they may or may not have this, or even knowing that they would not have this contract. We can't prohibit him from selling his business. So I don't have any. Is that significantly different than the?
No, it's actually pretty much the same as
okay,
what
I
we
didn't
have
think
right
it
now.
was. So this is the one. Next one that I think we're going to talk a little bit about.
All right, the next one is food and mixed organic wastes. Basically, what we're talking about is separating the food waste. Right now, everybody puts it into their trash, and it's collected with the normal trash pickup. What's being proposed is that the food waste will be separated and it will be put into the green waste containers. Now, there's two proposals on the table. One of them, from solid waste, is that they would provide biodegradable bags and a little container that would sit on their countertop. And the customers would put their food waste into these bags and then bring the bags out and drop them into their green waste cans. And right now, the green waste cans are picked up every other week. I'll get back to that. The other proposal is that the food waste is put into the green waste cans without this biodegradable bag. And, all right, let me back up a little bit. Under the solid waste proposal, the green waste cans will be brought back to the transfer station, dumped on the floor. The bags containing the food waste would be manually removed and put into another truck and sent down to their facility that they're partnered in Lakeport, where it will be composted in a machine at that point. And then the yard waste would go to where it's going right now to be chopped up to stuff. The other proposal is the food waste will be put into the green waste cans. The green waste cans will be brought to the transfer station, probably dumped on the floor to be transferred to another truck, and then taken to a certified composting company. Now, we're being kind of circumspect around here because we, the city, the committee is not naming names because we don't want to be in the position of telling solid waste exactly how to run their business. But as a matter of fact, there is one certified composter in the county. It's Cold Creek Compost, and we've been in conversations with them, as has Jerry Ward. And they can take not only the food waste, but they can also take brush, yard trimmings, the green waste, wood waste, soiled paper, manures, cat litter, fishery and agricultural waste, and some construction and demolition waste. So their ability to process these types of items is broader than what the solid waste proposal would cover. And of course, the corollary to this is that more material would be taken out of the waste stream, which would satisfy the state's mandate of a 50% diversion, as well as diverting a lot of stuff from going into the landfill that's now going in and turning it into compost, usable compost. Now, there's a couple of details on both of these issues that I believe need to be considered. In the one case, the green waste cans, as I mentioned, are currently picked up every other week. The committee has proposed that green waste is picked up every week because it gets a little messy if you have garbage sitting in a can for 2 weeks. That's one thing. The other one is, how do you physically get the garbage from your house into this can and keep it from getting, raunchy, especially in that time of the year when your green waste can isn't filled. So there is that consideration. A third one is concerning Cold Creek Compost. They currently have a 10-year lease on their operation, and it runs until December 31st, 2022, which is 8 years less than this new contract with solid waste would be. So, I would think we would need some sort of assurance that they're still going to be in business in 2030 to handle this stuff, because if we're diverting the food waste and other stuff to Cold Creek, and if something happens, if they don't get an extension on their lease, then we're stuck with the situation, and that could get a little messy. The other one is that Cold Creek has indicated they would charge a tipping fee of $21 a ton for the first 2 years, then they would go to $26 a ton. And they've also, well, I have it here, but the last information I have, what I have in here is that they also agree to an annual rate adjustment of 90% of the CPI. But the last official notice that I have came from Mike Sweeney, an email that he received from Cold Creek saying that their CPI annual adjustments would be 100% of the CPI. So we would have to get that clarified. And this would also be a pass-through to the ratepayers.
All you had it.
Yeah. Sorry.
You want to take a break for a second? I've got a question I can answer.
No, I was thinking for ease of discussion, we might want, thank you so much, we might want to letter these like option A and B. I'm pretty thinking as A is the put your food waste into the biodegradable bag and put it into
well,
the
actually, the last
bin.
time I presented it, I cleverly called them C and S, Cold Creek and solid waste. But okay, I get your
But I don't
point.
want to. I don't want to.
Right.
I think it's smart to just have it to a licensed facility. It's true that Cold Creek is the one that can do it right now, but basically, if we think of A as the one with the bags and B as the one where it all goes into the green waste bin, I'm supportive of option B, and I believe that Madge is as well. I'd be interested to hear what the rest of you guys think, but I don't think getting it into the bin is much of an issue. I have a compost. They sell very nice looking, metal compost bins for your counter with carbon filters so it doesn't smell and all that sorts of thing.
How do you feel about the pass-through, though?
I would prefer no pass-through, but one of the reasons why I was wanting to take up this renegotiation, we have the option to just not bring it up again and have it extended for another 10 years. Green waste was one of the primary reasons why I wanted to renegotiate the contract.
Food waste, not
food
green
waste.
Sorry.
Food waste into the green waste.
Can we back up here just a half a second and get me up to date here? In the opening paragraph, and Mike I look to you on this because it's on the top of your head. The state, we have a mandate to divert 50% of the waste stream right now, and that's our present obligation, or is it something less than that? It will be 50% the 1st of February. I mean, is that where we're at right now to be in compliance?
Right now, it's a 50% of the waste stream, and Willits is not meeting that quite.
And that is based on a base year of 1988 or 1992 or
Yes.
something like that. So, but is there, it has been told to us, or I've interpreted it, that there is a specific law, or is it just an administrative edict that food waste diversion has to be offered to the communities that the hauler serves. Am I asking that right?
Yeah, basically, it's called AB 1826, and as of January 1st, coming up, all cities must adopt a plan that shows how they will implement mixed organics collection in compliance with 1826. 1826 is directed at the commercial sector.
Well, because that's what it says here, is that the city adopt a plan by 16 divert waste from commercial and apartment block complexes. So there isn't a specific mandate to divert from residential?
No.
Okay.
Only in association with the overall waste diversion mandate of 50%.
Yeah, encompassed within the
Right.
50%.
Yeah, and clearly the mixed organics is the next best way to increase diversion. That's pretty much accepted widely. This is the next tool.
But this
The
mandate is for apartments and commercial.
Yeah, apartments are considered commercial because they have bulk bin collection. And the way it kicks in, as of April 1st of next year, anyone generating 8 cubic yards or more of organic waste must divert it according to state law. As of the following January 1st, any commercial business generating 4 cubic yards or more per week of or mixed organics must divert it. And then as of the following January 1st after that, any business generating 4 cubic yards of trash per week must divert their organics. So there's this whole sequence of deadlines worked in, and the state is telling all the cities, you have to figure out how you are going to allow your commercial customers to do this.
Got it. So, but there is not a specific law that is requiring the hauler to offer mixed organics recycling to a residential user?
No.
Thank you. All your.
So my question is for Ron, which one do you prefer? And if you don't like B, if you don't like the mixed, why don't you like that?
Well, you know, I have, pardon the pun, mixed feelings about this. It's obvious that the Plan B is all-inclusive. But there are these issues, you know, about the lease and about the pass-through that, you know, they are a factor.
Well, we're
in
just
the
saying
overall,
licensed contractors, so if Cold Creek's lease expired, then solid waste would have to find another licensed
well, not
composter.
exactly. I mean, well, kind of, but the problem is that there is, well, you know, we don't know what's going to be in 10 years. There might be another license. But if there's not, then someone's going to have to take a hard look at, you know, what do we do now?
Well, it would certainly be a cause to come back and reopen the contract.
Yeah.
I mean, if you lost.
That's true.
I mean, it isn't.
If Potrero
You're not
Hills
going to
closed
sit there
down
and
or something.
walk up and hit the wall constantly.
Well, it might.
Like an automatic vacuum cleaner that
Yeah,
can't
right.
just sit there.
The upside, a big plus for this, and I think this was mentioned earlier by some, is that this would be a pretty good diversion from the waste stream, and it would divert a lot of material going down to Potrero Hills. You know, it's an unknown amount that would be going to Cold Creek, you know, which is what, 20 miles away, 25, something like that. So it's a lot closer. So we don't know exactly how much would be taken out of the waste stream, but we could bet it would be a considerable amount, which means that solid waste would save hauling fees. They would save, if we don't go with the solid waste version with the, the bags that have to be separated, there is that manual labor that has to be done at the transfer station that wouldn't have to be done. So, I guess in total, the Plan B, we'll call it, is probably more attractive. But again, I have to point out that this would probably include a pass-through. And we'd have to get the this CPI locked in at 90%, not 100.
I want to complete the little conversation up here on this item with the council, and then I'll take public input.
Well, first of all, I did speak to Martin Millett about the 90%, and he agreed to that, so he could say so in public.
All right, yeah, we need something official.
And then, and also the 10-year, I know that he's got a huge investment in that operation, and I'm sure he is very motivated to have a renewal of his contract, and we won't know, we won't come up to the last month and go, whoops, there's nothing, so we can face that if it happens that for some reason he isn't able to get a renewal of his contract. But I think for me, the most important point is that we are in control of how much we pay, or not pay, that what we negotiate with Solid Waste of Willits. And I believe that given what other jurisdictions are paying and the services they're getting and the diversion rates that they're achieving by having this kind of mixed organic waste program, and knowing that very likely there will be some substantial savings on solid waste's part by not having to truck as much trash all the way to Potrero, and by not having to separate all the baggies, and by not having to provide 3,000 or whatever it is, 2,000 households with little baggies and resupply them and make sure that they don't use the non-biodegradable bags instead of the biodegradable. It's really actually seems like a very cumbersome and expensive process, whereas the mixed organics is more efficient and so forth. So he may say that he has to pass through the cost, but I don't think he does. And I think we have control over that. We can say, we want this service and we want it at the same cost with no pass-through. That's my feeling about my fiduciary responsibility to our ratepayers, is that we can say that and let solid waste decide whether they agree or not.
Larry, you have any comments on that?
Yes, I have stated many times that I am definitely for B, to go to Coal Creek, and I think that that's the way to go, and we won't be running around here in the future trying to figure out, or some other council will be figuring out what to do if we mandate it that it goes to Coal Creek, and that's just the way I think that our focus is Coal Creek.
So I got a couple questions on this, I guess. First off, my green waste from November to May is somewhere really close to zero. And I've got a 65-gallon or whatever it is can.
95.
What, 95?
95.
I've got a 95-gallon can that I'm going to take my container of organic waste, which I think is going to be this big around and this high, once a week. And I'm going to take it out there and put it in a 95-gallon can once a week. And Jerry's going to have to drive around town with his truck, grab this 95-gallon can to get, I think, to get nothing over the course of a week. My thought is that and it's, again, it's not option A or B. It's and Jerry's probably say no, he wouldn't do it. I don't know why you don't take that identified recyclable plastic container, bag, and put it in your garbage can with your other garbage. That gets thrown out on the floor just like the green waste gets thrown out on the floor. And you go around and snag all the, you'd have to pay me a lot of money to do it, but he's offered to do that, pulling it out of the green waste. Your garbage can is picked up once a week. It doesn't add any new garbage to your garbage can because it's been going in there anyway, just not segregated. So you're going to segregate your organic waste into your garbage can. And then he's picking up one can, he's picking it up as he always did. And he has, it's not his option, he didn't put it out there, but I'd suggest we approach him with that option.
We did talk about that, and I think he even said here at the meeting a month or so ago that the garbage trucks compact a lot more than the yard waste pickup trucks do, and that there would be an awful lot more failed containers, that it would all get smushed in there.
Right now
But the other really important thing is, even if all of our single-family residences didn't participate from, during the winter months, the restaurants and the food service commercial establishment would, and they can't deal with little baggies. So what are they going to do? And I think it needs to be consistent, and I think it's worth it. It'd be nice if neighborhoods could get together and, have 2 or 3 people can use one green bin, because you're right, there will be a low volume.
Well, and in fact, in that bin, you don't have to put it in a baggie. You just take your slop and go pour it in, right? In fact, that's really probably the way Martin would rather get it. He doesn't want your doggone plastic bags up there.
Yeah, he doesn't, because he'd have to separate them.
So I have a sycamore. I don't know if anyone else has this experience, but I never do not have something to put in the yard waste bin. And what I find, there are times where I don't actually have enough garbage or not that much recycling, so I just won't put it out.
Throw it in your yard waste bin?
No, I just don't roll the cart out, and so the truck, and sometimes I just forget. The truck just goes by. If you don't have anything to put, sometimes our trash is so little, I just wait till the next week to do it. But he already has trucks going around to get the yard waste. This would just be an increase in the
They do it twice
circulation.
I think.
But I always have something in there. It's not just the sycamore leaves, but, in the winter, we've got weeds. I have a dog.
God bless you.
I think
I have a dog. I'd love someplace to
I think
put
what's
that.
going to wind up happening is that people either segregate their garbage or they won't. And that's going to be the bottom line. It's going to be controlled by the customers. And I've spoken to a few people who said there's no way they're going to separate it and, put it in the green waste or whatever. So I think the reality, what's going to happen is we'll get X amount of food waste is going to be diverted. And as Madge pointed out, most of it comes from the commercial and the restaurants anyway. So there will still be a good stream that would be diverted.
And maybe some people will go in on the kitty litter and dog waste, and then someday decide to put their food scraps in.
So I think it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
The other thing I'd suggest you could do is just ask that, just like Jerry's got free oil drop-off at the transfer center, he have a free food waste drop-off for commercial and residential and
yummy.
I think we'd have less participation than this method.
So anyway, I think you're going to have a very difficult time negotiating this with Jerry without a rate adjustment. Asking him to take his trucks through town, double the rate that he is presently doing, even though he may not be picking up as many, stops and won't have stuff out there so often. I think you're going to have and I think this, I see where this is going. It seems to be well deal that. So you go ahead and, I just think you're going to have a really hard time negotiating it. Ananda, did you have another question?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Is that,
Could she come up front so that people could see?
Yeah.
come up to the...
Please.
Yeah, for the channel.
This is for the TV audience is what we're
We
concerned.
want to
I'll
make,
sit down.
get maximum exposure.
Same.
Are there, I know that the last time I at least was, brought in some information about when Portland, Oregon switched this, and it seemed very successful, that they were able to educate and get people to get the green waste and yard waste and food waste all into the one container. And so there seems to be something, someone we can follow who's done this and it's been successful. On the other hand, I want to know, in option A, do we have someone who's doing that and it's successful? If there isn't, then I wonder why we would really be looking at that so much. And then the other is, if we are putting food, yard, green, so forth, in the one container, and picking that up once a week, then it would play out that we would only be picking up the other garbage can every 2 weeks. So there would not be an increase, in my mind, in that kind of, they would offset each other. You'd be picking one up once a week and the other one up twice a week, whereas now it's the other way around. So that's just going around in my head as I listen to that. So I guess that's right now, if you could.
Thank you.
Since,
Yeah,
Ron, you've done that research.
Yeah,
you
well,
could
I
speak to
don't know
that.
the answer to that. You asked a lot of questions, but to my knowledge, and Mike is our expert on that, but he has told us that this is not done elsewhere. It's doing it that way. But you brought out some good points, and this is, to go to what Bruce was talking about, is part of the negotiation. Certain things will happen as a result of separating the food waste from, the regular waste. Number one, as we mentioned, there'll be less pickup required, perhaps, of the trash, because there'll be smaller amounts. Also, there will probably be a number of people going down from a larger can to a smaller can, but that would affect his revenue stream, because a large can costs more than a smaller can. So that has to be balanced, but it's also going to be balanced some more by fewer trips to the, Potrero Hills, lower cost. So there's all these factors that'll play into it.
Yeah.
That'll have to be part of the discussion to see how we can come up with some kind of an accommodation.
Okay. Thank you.
April.
April Twiddell. So I am doing Plan A. We were offered, some people in the valley were offered the option of doing the recycling of the kitchen scraps, and all we were offered was Plan A with the special bags, taking them out, and every other week you put them in the yard waste one. And it's astonishing how little trash we have, actual trash, as a result. So that's all we were offered, is the little bag thing. So.
And you're doing it.
Pardon?
You're doing that now.
I'm doing it.
How long has it been offered to the county?
1 or 2 years. I'm not quite sure how
And
long.
I
But
think
it's
he
been a
only
while.
offered it to
and I'm
maybe a
pardon?
dozen. I think he offered it to maybe a dozen ratepayers. He told us.
Only a dozen?
A very small
He
number.
offered it, and then
Maybe a dozen
maybe a
or
dozen
so
responded
picked
or
up on
something.
it.
Yeah, could be.
So you like it? It works well for you?
Yes, because I'm in the pattern now of doing it, and it's simple. It's real simple, and it's reduced the regular trash a lot, so I have the smallest possible regular trash.
Where do you put your garbage, your food waste?
The food waste, I put in those bags, and I put them in the yard waste container.
They go in the yard waste.
They gave me a yard waste container for that purpose.
A separate yard?
No, it's the big one, but I didn't have a big one before.
Oh, you didn't have one before?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it doesn't smell, once I forgot to take it out to the street, and it was a full month, garbage, that was a little whiffy. But
Crab season is really tough.
But otherwise, it's, every other week is fine.
Would you put your kitty litter in the yard waste if we went to this new
Oh, yeah, I think it would
method?
be easier for people not to have the bags.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay, thank you. So I think you got a.
I think, yeah.
I think you're gonna have,
Yeah, this.
you know, you have to keep in, I mean, you do have, everyone just understands it's a negotiation, but when you stop negotiating and your option is to take this out to bid, then you're gonna set this document out and go for an RFP and see what people do. And that, if you don't get a better price, you've played every card.
Right.
And when you go back to Jerry, he said, well, heck, the best deal you guys got was obviously this. And
But at the same time, why not negotiate for what we want?
no, I'm all for it, but that, to me, this one is going to be a tricky negotiation. So,
Well, that leaves us what you just said.
I think that Larry's for it, Madge is for it.
B.
I'm not.
Okay. All right, and that segues us very nicely into other services that solid waste has agreed to provide. And they have agreed to accept clean shrink wrap at the transfer station at no charge from residential and commercial accounts within the city.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I just want to say for the manufacturing companies, I know that's a large amount of waste, and they previously were not allowed to,
Exactly.
yeah.
They will also continue to provide free services to all city facilities at no charge. In addition, they will eliminate the disposal fees that had previously been charged, resulting in a savings to the city of about $350 a month. And they will also continue to provide service at no cost to service clubs and nonprofits that put on annual events in the city. So these are the extra things that solid waste has been doing all along for no cost. Can I call on
My question is, I think that if they're gonna provide this to the city, that they need to have, when the fellow comes around and takes the trash out of the containers that are around the city, that they need to clean at least the top of it off. They are really bad. And people lay stuff on top of them and pour their coffee on it and all of these things. And it's pretty much up to the merchant, downtown anyhow, to go out and clean it up so that it's not so nasty that people won't even walk down the street by it.
Okay, I have that noted.
And you do mention that we have a good working relationship with them, and I appreciate that. I mean, it's
And that's
true.
that's a factor in everything that we're negotiating.
Yeah.
It's if we were to go out for bid and get another contractor, you know, it's a crapshoot whether or not we'd ever get anywhere like that.
Mike, do you have any other wisdom to add to this discussion at this point, or Ms.
I'd like to thank you for bringing up that point. We have the same problem in Ukiah and elsewhere, and that's a good solution, is just to add it as an obligation to clean it when they empty it, sidewalk receptacles. I would like to point out some history here. We have the mixed food waste collection in the county areas of Empire Waste Management and in the city of Fort Bragg. And in both cases, food waste was added to the green bills without any change in the rates. So I think part of the background here is that there's some money on the table. Typically, when you give a new 15-year contract, there are rate concessions. The last time around in 2000, SWOW cut the residential rates 30% in return for getting the 15-year contract. So you do have some negotiating power in this situation, and what your real choices are as to where you want to obtain those concessions, whether it would be the franchise fee or a weekly pickup of some items instead of once every 2 weeks or whatever. So I would urge you to be a little bit more optimistic in your outlook on this.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, this is the last one, sort of. The last item is the service rates, and we sort of alluded to them as we went along. You know, whenever you do contract negotiations is sort of like an unspoken truism that you have to get something, just because. We looked at the financial statements that were presented to the city by Solid Waste, and they showed that over this, we're looking at a 7-year period from '07 through '13. It shows that the Willits operation provided a little over 15% of the gross revenue, a little less than 15% of the expenses, but our franchise generated almost 25% of their net profit. So there seems to be an imbalance between, you know, how much profit the city franchise is giving to providing solid waste compared to what the costs and revenue stream is. So it seems like because of that, there's a little more wiggle room where they can afford to give us something. And again, comparing the service rates for the Willits customers to rates elsewhere, it's in line with a lot of the other franchises, but the Willits rates are higher than the Ukiah franchise. But in my mind, that's kind of difficult to deal with, only because, I mean, in order for us to get the same kind of rate that Ukiah is getting, we would have to go out for another hauler. Mm-hmm. That's my feeling.
No, we got a 30% reduction the last time we negotiated.
Well, that's true.
But it didn't last.
So anyway, there were some.
If you get a big enough reduction, it doesn't have to last.
You know, I don't see. There was, oh, I'm sorry, okay. Under the recommended actions, the alternatives, here's where we had, you know, a difference of opinion.
Speaking of that, could you just clarify for me, under, it's like on the food mixed and organic waste, where you say, although there was not unanimity, the majority of the ad hoc committee recommends. And I couldn't quite figure that out, because there's two of you on the ad hoc.
Well, there's also the staff.
Yeah, there's Adrian and Susie are also on the committee.
And Mike.
Oh, and they voted?
Yes, they voted.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I struggled.
And I gotta tell you, when I'm sitting there with 3 women,
Ron, I
will
will
not go there.
Just stop right there.
Strong women. Anyway.
Not gonna.
So
You're
is,
right,
so the recommend,
Anyway.
I don't mean to cut to it, but, I mean, let's
Yeah,
cut to
well,
it.
let's cut to it, yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically, there's a couple of options here. Either do not increase the franchise fees. Well, we kind of settled that one, so we'll take that off the table, I believe. Yeah, I think the majority went with not increasing, no, actually it was split.
Split towards keeping it the same.
12.
Yeah.
I think we've answered all of your deals. Now I think it's back to you to go bring us the bacon.
Well, I would make a
there is
motion.
there's one item about either getting freeze the rates for 3 to 5 years with no COLA increases, or one-time percentage reductions, say 5% or something like that, or just leaving the way they are.
I want a 30% reduction.
Well, there is.
I'm interested in making a motion.
Do it.
Well,
I would like to move that we provide a negotiated package with all the non-controversial items staying the same. No increase in the franchise fee, so staying at 12 for the sense of the majority. Going with option B of the mixed organic wastes, so all in one bin to a licensed facility, to be picked up weekly with no pass-through, that's what we would like to get, and a cost of living increase free, a freeze in the rate for 3 years.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Any public comment on this? This is just to,
Kind of start.
direct
Yeah.
the ad hoc committee in their future negotiations. Mike, what would you suggest?
If Jerry were here, I believe that he would probably point out that, if pressed, that he would prefer a one-time rate concession up front rather than a freeze for 3 years. And the reason is that, you know, we live in an uncertain world, events change, and, you know, he would be foregoing the possibility of CPI and diesel fuel rate adjustments in the second and third years. And that would be exposing him, I believe, to an unfair degree of risk. So I believe that a rate concession is certainly appropriate to seek in this. But my recommendation would be that it would be a certain percentage, like 5%, right up front at the start, rather than trying to tie him down for 3 years.
You want to amend your motion?
I will amend the motion, yeah, for the 5%.
Could I make a suggestion for an amendment, especially since I was the seconder, that he has already essentially foregone what was a normal raise for this year, which would have been 1.69%. So I would suggest that we say we have a total of 5% rate reduction.
Including
1.69 that's this year, and then the beginning of January 1st, 2016 would be the other 3 point, whatever it is, 3.31, whatever, so that it would be a total.
Let me just ask for Kathy, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so I will amend my motion for striking the
3 to 5.
rate freeze and instead substituting a total of a 5% concession with the 1 point whatever included.
Knowing that we had, the last time we negotiated this, we got a 30%.
Yeah.
And you want to start out at 5%.
30% is residential only.
And yes, and I also do that because I'm putting value on some of the other items.
I understand that part. I understand that part.
Could I have it read back to me what the motion is?
Okay, so we're going to leave the franchise fee at the 12%. We're going to go with option B, a weekly pickup with no bypass, correct?
That's right.
And cost of living is a total of 5% concession.
It shouldn't be called cost of living, it's just a rate reduction of 5% total
Okay.
between this year and January of 2016.
So this results in no rate increase, right?
With the goal of no rate increase.
Right, oh, yeah, right.
If we have to buy the whole thing all at once, so we either vote for the way that you wrote it, or...
Yeah, as far as that motion,
That's
yes.
all I need to know. Thank you very much.
And then if that fails, then we can come up with another motion.
Okay.
So that, we have the motion second, the motion's been reread. Does anybody here want to comment? We have a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Councilmember Strand?
No.
Strong?
Yes?
Madrigal?
Yes?
Weinstein?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
You know, I was hoping that I would be the sole no vote, and I was going to vote yes, because I think it's important to approach a negotiation like this as a unified front. But being as there is already one no vote, I will vote no. But if the no vote would want to reconsider his, I think it's important to go into these things with a unified deal. But if I can't get that, that's just like that. So it's 3-2, passes 3-2.
Can I also clarify that I think we should bring this back with a yes or no, whatever we get from the negotiation, for sure within a month, and ideally in the next meeting, because we don't want to run out of time in the event that we do decide.
Yep. Okay.
And thank you guys for your work.
And
You said
Mike,
that you used to have to do it every year.
thank you, Mike, for making yourself available to us for this. Good and welfare.
Actually, I have other city
Committee
council
re-
member reports,
oh.
sorry.
That's right.
That's my thing now.
Yeah, it is.
I just wanted to share that I was able to go to a economic outlook for Mendocino County that was put on by it was put on by ABC, which is the Farm Bureau, Employers Council, North Coast Builders Association, North Coast Builders and the Real Estate Group. And
Agricultural and Business Coalition.
Yes, it's like an interest group. This was the second time that I've gone to, they have a PhD economist come up from Sonoma State, I believe. And the outlook was fairly positive. Our jobs are up. We gained about 430 jobs this past year in Mendocino County. Fewer than everywhere else. I mean, not everywhere else, but it appears the economic recovery is about 75 miles around San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and some over on the coast. But things are getting better. Our housing prices have gone up, which is positive. Government jobs have stayed pretty steady. Service jobs have stayed steady, but our goods-producing jobs have been in slow decline, which I think should be a big concern to everybody. Median housing prices are up, even though it's still much lower than most other places, with the exception of Lake County. Lake County is pretty much harder off than us on every graph. Our age is also increasing. Our median age is 41.8 now in Mendocino County. I thought it was interesting. One of the more interesting slides, Supervisor Woodhouse had asked him specifically to address the marijuana issue economically for Mendocino County, and he did a decent job of trying to give some suggestions of things that people should look at. One of the slides that was interesting, as I mentioned, we're pretty much below everyone else as far as our housing prices and economic growth, except for percentage of retail sales, something like that. Mendocino County is like way up here, and then San Francisco and Napa and Sonoma. And it had to do, we were thinking, because of the cash economy. It had to do with like retail sales per capita. It was interesting because that was the one graph where Mendocino County is way up. So it was very interesting. I'm glad that I went.
Good. Thank you.
I have one too.
I have one too.
No?
We may have the same one. Tomorrow night, at the Board of Supervisors at 5:30, there's going to be a meeting to talk about Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014, and I was planning on going. The Little Lake Aquifer is not covered by this act, but I think eventually we need to look at it to see what we can do about protecting it. And I have been in contact with the Board of Supervisors, and Carrie Brown actually sent me this notice, so I'm hoping to become part of that discussion to protect the Little Lake Valley aquifer.
I was wanting to go, but it's the same time as the mixer.
And,
It was a hard choice.
I wanted to just mention that the Wowzer facility had a kind of a major public rollout of their plans for the future back, was it Saturday? Yeah, and one of the things that they're doing is going to start running it like a business and trying to make money. And their main product line is going to be these little micro houses. So they're calling it Wowzer Wagons of Willits. So people that are interested in helping them launch that, they're going to be doing fundraising online. They're also doing fundraising from the community, and they're trying to work also with local other enterprises to, like dovetail supplies of things and workers training and all that stuff, so that it would be, a benefit to the whole economic picture, not just for their own survival.
Great, thank you. Now, good and welfare. We have any other comments? Well, item 14, in conversation with our legal counsel, we have no closed session this evening.
Oh.
The
Really?
item of brook trails, I don't we don't have anything, reason to meet in closed session on brook trails.
No, that's true, that's true.
But the other
And
one?
The other one?
No, I asked that this be put on here because I thought there would be information that I wanted to bring to you, but it didn't happen, so.
Okay.
So
So can I ask if we're gonna have a champagne reception after the? That was my
we're
plan
going
for
to
closed
adjourn,
session.
we're going to adjourn this meeting, if I
Okay.
can get a motion.
I so move.
Thank you, and then we're free to do what we all wish to